Regard. I was also disappointed as I watched television coverage of today's Supreme Court proceedings. For months now, or even longer than that, almost a year and a half now, conservatives in the legislature have been questioning the validity of this law and have been encouraging state agency directors to slow down because we advocated and argued that this was a encroachment on the legitimate Commerce Clause authority granted to Congress. We were right. It was indeed found today to be in violation of the Commerce Clause. However, despite the administration passing this legislation and campaigning for this legislation on the basis that it is not a tax, and President Obama stated clearly on many occasions this was not a tax, they now today embrace it as a tax and are heralding the decision by the court. It is constitutional, and we respect the will of the Supreme Court. The frustrating thing is that this tax, unlike any other tax in American history, most taxes you're taxed either because of income or because of activity. You decide to purchase something, or you invest, or you buy a home, or you buy property or something. This tax is not broad-based. It is not spread out across the population as a whole. It selects a few people and taxes them only for their mere existence. They've done nothing. They choose to participate in nothing. They choose to not participate in any type of commerce, and yet they're taxed because they are here and exist. That, I believe, the American people will not stand for. It may pass legal muster with the Supreme Court, but I don't think it passes a smell test for the American people that this is fair or equitable. And it's certainly not what was promised to them when this bill was passed. The interesting thing about the opinion, I've read all of it, is toward the end, where they say that the federal government cannot impose a Medicaid expansion on states. That leaves this battle now here in this capital and in capitals across all 50 states. I'm of the opinion that if there's not enough states who voluntarily now agree to pay for a significant Medicaid expansion, then the whole scheme begins to fall apart. What happens? They're raising Medicaid eligibility in Arkansas up to 133 or 138% of poverty. We have a $250 to $400 million shortfall right now in Medicaid. If we don't have the money to expand that coverage, what happens to those people within this grand ObamaCare scheme? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think that answer is known yet. I know there's been reports from governors all across the country who've said they're not going to, they're financially strapped and they're not going to voluntarily expand their Medicaid coverage. What if there's a majority of the states who don't do it? Are those people taxed because they don't have insurance? Are they given a rebate? Where does that money come from to rebate all these people now? It opens up a whole lot of questions that I think we as legislators need to get the answer to before we move forward. I know we've had reports coming from state agency heads who say onward and forward, let's move forward, but I think that's the wrong approach. I think has more questions to be answered now than before today's ruling, and it's incumbent on us as legislators and as protectors of the taxpayer to get answers to those questions before we do anything. I think it's also important to wait and see what other states do. We don't want to be the only state that voluntarily agrees to Medicaid expansion, and nobody else, or very few other states do, and the system collapses under the weight of its own financial burdens, and we're left having expanded Medicaid with no benefits from the federal government because the system as a whole is not sustainable. So it was a disappointing day in many regards, but it is exciting, I think, for this debate now to move to the state houses and to local governments where we, I hope, have the ear of our constituents more so than those people in Washington who, just by the sheer fact that they represent a lot more people, aren't able to adhere to their concerns of their constituents as much. It'll be an interesting session. It'll be an interesting election here in Arkansas. No longer can state legislative candidates say, well, that's a federal issue, and I'm not going to take an opinion, not going to take a position on it. It's now our issue. It's a state issue. And there won't be any more hiding. There won't be any more obfuscating. There's going to have to be your real opinions flushed out during this election process. And then next session, there will be a healthy and important debate occur on the direction that Arkansas is going to play in the overall grand scheme of Obamacare.